They gave this land a name, and the moment you accepted it, you accepted their version of the story. But tonight, we go back. Further back than Rome, further back than Greece, back to when this land named itself. And what it called itself will change everything you think you know. Before we talk about the name, we need to talk about what was here, because that context is the whole point. This is Roots of Africa, where we learn the truth they never taught. 200,000 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, the first human beings walked on this land. Not in Europe, not in Asia. Here, the bones are in the ground. The science confirms it. The oldest human skull ever discovered, found in Ethiopia in 1967 by anthropologist Richard Leakey's team, dated at over 195,000 years old. This is the cradle, and from that cradle rose something extraordinary. Not one civilization, many. Not one culture, hundreds. Not one story, thousands. By 3500 BCE, 5,500 years ago, the people of the Nile Valley had already developed writing, mathematics, medicine, and architecture so sophisticated it still confounds engineers today. The Great Pyramid of Giza was completed around 2560 BCE. It remained the tallest man-made structure on Earth for the next 3,800 years. Let that sit. For nearly 4 millennia, the tallest thing any human being had ever built was right here on this land. And yet, most of the world calls this place by a name that a Roman administrator coined for a single province in what is now northern Tunisia. How does that happen? How does a continent this ancient, this vast, this accomplished end up wearing someone else's name? That is the question we are here to answer tonight. Let us walk through who was here, because the name is just the surface. Underneath it is an entire world buried by design. In the ancient north, along the Mediterranean coast of what is now Algeria and Tunisia, lived a people called the Numidians. And if that name is new to you, that is not an accident. The Numidians were cavalry warriors so exceptional that the greatest generals of the ancient world competed to have them on their side. They rode without saddles, without bridles. They guided the horses with only their knees, at full gallop, in the heat of battle. Roman military strategists documented this with a kind of awe they rarely gave to anyone. When the Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca crossed the Alps in 218 BCE with 37 war elephants and invaded Italy, shocking the entire Roman world, it was Numidian cavalry doing the most lethal damage. At the Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE, Hannibal's forces killed between 50,000 and 70,000 Roman soldiers in a single afternoon. Military historians still study that battle today. It remains one of the most tactically brilliant victories in the history of warfare, and the Numidians were at the center of it. Then came their king, Jog Harta. In 112 BCE, Jog launched a guerrilla war against Rome that lasted 6 years and humiliated an entire generation of Roman generals. The Roman Senate, the most powerful legislative body in the ancient world, publicly admitted that this war was draining Rome in ways no enemy had managed before. One senator reportedly said Jugurtha had exposed the Senate as a body that could be bought. A king from this land made the Roman Senate question its own integrity. And Carthage. We must talk about Carthage. Founded around 814 BCE, according to ancient sources, by Phoenician settlers led by a queen named Dido, Carthage grew into a maritime empire that dominated the entire western Mediterranean for 5 centuries. Its harbor at Koton was an engineering marvel, a circular military port inside a rectangular commercial harbor capable of housing 220 warships simultaneously. Archaeologists excavating the site in the 20th century found it exactly as the ancient sources described. Carthage was so powerful that Rome fought it not once, not twice, but 3 times. The Punic Wars lasted from 264 BCE to 146 BCE, over a century of conflict. And when Rome finally won, they did not just defeat Carthage, they spent 17 days burning it to the ground. Every building, every wall, every archive, every record. Rome burned the library of Carthage. Think about what was lost in those flames. Centuries of science, philosophy, navigation charts, medical texts, astronomical records, gone deliberately, because Rome understood that a people's knowledge is their power, and they wanted that power extinguished. Further south, Nubia, also known as the Kingdom of Kush, a civilization that was producing gold, iron, and cotton textiles, while Rome was still a collection of villages on 7 hills. The Nubians built over 200 pyramids, more than Egypt, steeper, more precise. The pyramids at Meroe, constructed between roughly 700 BCE and 350 CE, stand in the Sudanese desert today. They are real. You can visit them. And in 747 BCE, the Nubian king Piye marched north and conquered Egypt, placing the Nubian dynasty on the pharaoh's throne, the 25th dynasty. Dark-skinned kings from the south, ruling the greatest civilization the ancient world had ever known. None of these people, not the Numidians, not the Carthaginians, not the Nubians, called their home Africa. Now, the name. The word Africa first appears in Roman records around 146 BCE, the year Carthage was destroyed. It was the name Rome gave to a single administrative province, one region, what is now northern Tunisia. That is all, not this entire continent, not this vast ancient landmass stretching from the Mediterranean to the Cape. Just one conquered territory, named for Roman bureaucratic convenience. The most cited origin of the word traces to the ancient Greek word Afrique. And this is where we slow all the way down, because the etymology reveals something disturbing. In ancient Greek, the prefix a functions as a negation. It means without, an absence, a removal, like the word atypical, not typical, or asymmetry without symmetry. And the root word phrike, it means cold. But in ancient Greek, phrike did not only mean low temperature, it also carried the meaning of horror, of dread, the cold shiver that runs through you when something terrifying is near. Cold and horror existed together in a single concept. So Afrique, the etymological root of Africa, translates as without cold, without horror. Pause there, feel what that means. The outsiders who named this land did not name it for what it was. They named it for what it was not, from their own perspective. They stood in the cold, plague-ridden, war-torn world. The Roman Empire of the 2nd century BCE was a place of brutal winters, political violence, and constant war. And they looked south, and they named what they saw by the absence of their own suffering, without cold, without the horror of their winters. As if the oldest land on earth, the birthplace of humanity itself, needed to be described in relation to Roman discomfort. This is one of the oldest mechanisms of colonization, and it was baked into the name before colonization became a formal system. You erase a place's identity by describing it only in relation to yourself. You make your experience the universal standard, and everything else becomes either a variation of you or an absence of you. And yet, and this is where something extraordinary happens, even in that diminished outsider description, the truth leaked through, without horror. Even the Romans, even the Greeks, the people who would eventually come to exploit this continent, could not name it without admitting there was no horror here. This land was life, not death, warmth, not suffering, greatness, not absence. They could not bring themselves to say what it actually was, so they said what it was not. And that half-truth, that outsider's description, became the name the entire world uses today. But the people of this land did not need outsiders to name them. They already had a name. a name that existed long before Rome built its first road, long before Greece held its first Olympic Games in 776 BCE, a name spoken in living languages, recorded in ancient manuscripts, carried through generations by the people who actually lived here. That name is Alkebulan. Alkebulan. Say it, let it land, not as a foreign word, as a reclamation. The name Alkebulan is documented by African and Moorish scholars. It appears in the work of historians like Dr. Yosef Ben Jokanan, born in Ethiopia in 1918, who spent his academic career excavating African history from the archives where colonialism had buried it. It appears in the records of Muslim scholars from the great intellectual centers of Timbuktu, where, by the 14th century CE, the city held between 100,000 and 180,000 people, and 3 universities, at a time when most European cities were dying of the Black Death. The manuscripts of Timbuktu, over 700,000 of them, still exist. The Mama Haidara Commemorative Library, the Ahmed Baba Institute, they are real. They are accessible, and they contain centuries of African intellectual life that the world was never supposed to know survived. Alkebulan, its meaning is not a description of weather. It is not a comment on temperature. It is not an outsider's observation of what is absent. Its meaning, translated from the ancient Cushitic and Berber root languages of Northeast and North Africa, is Mother of Mankind. Some scholars render it as Garden of Eden. Both translations point to the same truth. This land knew what it was. The people who lived here understood, from the earliest moment of human self-awareness, that they were the origin, the source, the beginning of everything that came after. And so they named themselves accordingly, not without horror, not a Roman province, not a colonial administrative zone, the mother of mankind. Put those two names side by side. Africa, a place described by the absence of Roman suffering. Alkebulan, the mother of all humanity. One name is about absence, the other is about everything. One name was given by conquerors. The other was given by the people who actually knew this land, who had lived on it, loved it, and understood what it meant for 200,000 years before any outsider arrived. The name Alkebulan did not disappear by accident. It was a system, a sustained, deliberate, generational project designed to sever a people from their own story. When European colonial powers formalized their occupation of this continent at the Berlin Conference of 1884, 14 nations sitting in a room in Germany, dividing Africa between them like it was real estate with no tenants, they understood something critical. If you control what the people know about themselves, you control the people. So they built schools that punished children for speaking their own languages, languages that carried, encoded in grammar, proverb, and story, millennia of accumulated wisdom about how to live on this land, how to govern communities, how to understand the cosmos. They sent missionaries who told people that spiritual practices older than Christianity, older than Islam, older than any organized Western religion, practices that had sustained human communities for tens of thousands of years, were evil, primitive, demonic. They burned libraries, they banned oral traditions, they sidelined elders, they renamed rivers, mountains, cities, sometimes replacing names that had existed for thousands of years with the names of the men who had discovered them, as if a thing does not exist until a European sees it. And with every generation, the distance between the children of this land and the name Alkebulan grew wider. Children were born who had never heard it, who grew up believing the story of this continent began when outsiders arrived, as if everything before was silence and waiting. That is the real horror, not the cold the Greeks feared, not their winter darkness. The real horror is what was done to a people's memory. But memory is stubborn. Truth is stubborn. The name survived in manuscripts, in the work of scholars like Cheikh Anta Diop, the Senegalese physicist and historian, who in 1954 published Nations, Negres et Culture, arguing that ancient Egyptian civilization was Black African in origin, a claim the Western academic establishment spent decades trying to disprove and largely failed to in the work of Dr. Ben Jokanan in the libraries of Timbuktu, in elders who refused to let go, in people, ordinary people, who felt something wrong in the version of history they were handed and kept digging until they found what was real. The name survived because the people survived, and as long as they are here, the truth is here. So,
Alkebulan,
now you know.
we gather by the flame. Alkebulan, we remember the mother. Alkebulan.
You know that the name Africa traces to a Greek word meaning without cold, without horror, a description that centers the experience of outsiders, that names this ancient land by the absence of European suffering. You know that the Numidians made Rome bleed at the Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE, that Carthage forced 3 wars before Rome felt safe enough to burn it, that Nubia ruled Egypt under the 25th Dynasty, that the scholars of Timbuktu were preserving hundreds of thousands of manuscripts while Europe was consumed by plague and religious war. You know that none of those people, not one of them, called their home Africa. They called it Alkebulan, mother of mankind, garden of Eden, the origin, the beginning, the source of everything that came after. And you know that this name was not lost, it was buried by a system with full intention. The African proverb says, "Until the lion learns to write, every story will glorify the hunter." The lion is learning to write. This channel, this work, is part of that. Every video we make here is one more piece of the story returned to the people it belongs to. One more thread pulled from the archive where colonialism tried to lock it away forever. The cold and horror that the Greeks feared in their winters, this land never had it. Not because it was lucky, because this land was built differently, because the people who came from this soil were built differently, because something about this ancient ground produces a kind of human being that the rest of the world has spent centuries trying to copy, suppress, or destroy, precisely because it could not be ignored. The mother of mankind does not apologize for what she produced, and neither should her children. If this reached something in you, if something in your chest shifted while watching this, then do not let it stop here. Subscribe to Roots of Africa right now, because this is only the beginning. We are going back, all the way back, to every kingdom, every queen, every buried truth, every stolen name. Hit the bell so you don't miss a single video. And share this with someone who still thinks African history starts with slavery, because it doesn't. It starts here, 200,000 years before any of that. It starts with the mother of mankind, Alkebulan.